baseline knowledge, skills, and attributes as it relates to what it takes to either run for candidate or run an electoral campaign. Those knowledge and skills are completely applicable to any type of grassroots campaigning. So there's a lot of overlaying here that you can use. And if you don't run, at the very least, you'll know from inside out how campaigns should be developed, organized. You will most likely at some point in your life be involved in some of this campaign work, right? As a volunteer, as a supporter, or as where you are in terms of your work. So, Grassroots Campaign 101. Today's March 13th, 2021. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Next slide.
We want to remind everybody about the color tax video. All the information is in the chat right now. Please register for it. We will discuss this, at some point in our time together. We think it's a really important part of Chicago's history and relevant to a lot of the things we've talked about.
Right, and that documentary really is a good teach-in moment. Also, write in your notes, Color of Law. If you want to get that book, look it up. It's a great book that highlights the role and function of the United States federal government in this issue. Their harm they've done. Civic Lab, of course, is here. We're here for you. We're hoping that after this process, you'll be able to stay connected with us in our work. If not, that's okay. We know that you'll have all the information you need and the knowledge. Go out there and do your civic love, spread your civic love wherever you're at. One of the things we're going to have you be working on is this. This is one of the most immediate events that's taking place. We're going to be activating you all hopefully next week. March 20th. Excuse me. We're going to revisit the power matrix. You all will come back with lots of good specific data, people, places, and things for that power matrix. And there'll be a call hub training, right? And so obviously phone banking is a critical aspect of organizing, right? It's not all everybody show up to the rallies with signs and hurrah. There's a lot of work that goes into place to get people activated, mobilized, and organized. We have an event coming up called our Harambe. It's Let's Pull All Together. It's a process out of East Africa of nation building. This will be our third Harambe, and it's an opportunity for us as an agency to connect with our constituents, to create some intersectional thinking and being together between culture, arts, and politics. It's Saturday, April 10th, from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. We're expecting all of you to be there for that Harambe, and you will be doing some call hub work to get people to that Harambe. And so we get anywhere between 20 to 100 plus people for these Harambes. Like I said, this is our third Harambe, and it's our first one during COVID, although we did a civics webinar around isolation, similar to the Harambe. And so we'll have the agenda, the flow, and we'll go over that next Saturday at the next game. Next slide. Tom, do you want to say anything about the Harambe? You good?
We're good.
So we're going to start this off by talking about why do we fight, right? What's the purpose of us fighting for what we believe in, right? And you can see the screen. You see Alexandria Ocasio of AOC, right? What she represents, what her fights are, and the people who put her into office from her district. You see students in colleges across the country, they're calling for an end to deportations, education, not deportation. And then you got Candace Denard, who's been involved in the community campaign to open a trauma center at U of C. That's in the top right corner, right? That's local. That happened. It took them 3 to 5 years to fight that struggle, to open up a trauma center on the South Side. There was not, up until then, there was no trauma center on the South Side. So anybody who was shot had to be put in an ambulance and driven downtown to Northwestern. You can imagine how many people lost their lives, particularly young people, because they pretty much bled out, weren't able to get to a trauma center within a short distance. And so Candace Denard and a whole group of young people that we worked with in the past fought that good fight, and were able to get a trauma center at the UFC. So why do you all fight? What's the purpose of fighting? You see Ali right there, right? You guys know Ali, right? No? So think about Ali. I've been showing my kids YouTube videos of him fighting, like physically fighting, this past couple of weeks, and I'm just amazed at how quick he was. You watch him from the Olympics. You go to Ali boxing clubs and watch Ali from 66, 60, 62 Olympics, something like that. Watch him fight in the Olympics all the way into his mid-30s, past his prime. He was an incredible boxer. But what was Ali also incredible? What was his fame to claim? Does anybody remember? Not just boxing, right? What did he do that was infamous for some, but famous for others?
He protested the war, the Vietnam War.
Yeah, he not only he protested the Vietnam War, he absolutely did. He basically said, "Why are you sending me off several thousand miles to kill brown people and yellow people when they've not done nothing to me?" Right? And you, by the way, are the one who's got your foot on my neck here in the United States. So he absolutely protested the Vietnam War. He was part of Dr. King protested the Vietnam War. There's a whole slew of Black people and brown people and white people and Americans who were protesting the war. But for Ali, he was iconic, right? They did everything to destroy his career, did everything to denounce him. And what happened is he became a global leader for social justice, to the very day he passed away. So why are you all fighting? What's the purpose for you all fighting? Think about that. You gotta know why. Why do you fight, Remington?
I guess equality is big for me under the law. We like to celebrate that we're all created equal. We have the 14th Amendment, but in practical life, not everybody is really representative, equally because of their economic status or their race or sexual orientation or background or history or whatever. And I guess the little guy's kind of the person that I like to fight for.
Okay. I mean, that's huge. I mean, the little guy, that's part of our DNA for a lot of us. We want to fight for the vulnerable, the ones that can't necessarily stand up. And in a society that tends to stamp out little guys and little people and us little people out here, right? So that's great. Thank you for sharing that. What about everybody? Why are you fighting? Celia, Luke, Eli, Owen, Emily, think about it. Dana, why are you all fighting? What's the purpose?
Well, I wrote in the chat to encourage change. We can't just sit back and wait for someone else to take action, because who knows when that could be.
Is that why you're fighting, Celia? What's at the core of your purpose for fighting?
I feel like at my core, I would say it's because I genuinely care about other people and their level of equality and how they're treated. I think that's the core of it all for me.
Yeah, this is not some thesis. You gotta find that passion, that thing that you fight for every day. That's gonna get you up in the morning to fight for what you believe in. And so if that's where it's at, you generally empathize and care for other people. That's a huge value, right? That's a wrap around that and build and scaffold from that. What about you, Luke? Thank you for sharing, Celia. Luke, Eli, all of you, jump in. Why are you fighting? What gets you up in the morning out there to take on the world and,
I would say it's the pursuit of happiness. I think that everyone has the right to pursue what makes them happy. And I think that looks different for everybody. And I think that should be celebrated. And I think that everyone should have the opportunity to pursue happiness, and I think that equality is the start of that fight. But I think even more so, people should have opportunities to do what they want to do.
And so is that at your core? That's you get up every morning and say, I'm going to go out there and fight for justice, fight for this, because I want everybody to have that opportunity.
You could say that.
I'm asking you, do you say that?
I mean, to be honest with you, I'm not necessarily waking up every day and going into communities, but it is a firm belief of mine that people have the right to happiness, to pursue what makes them happy.
Absolutely. That's good. Thank you, Owen. Core beliefs. Emily, Luke, Eli, Dana, why are you all fighting?
So for me, it's always been kind of like when I was trying to decide what I wanted to do with my life, I would always come back to the idea that I wanted to do something that would make a positive impact on the world, and then I wanted to leave the world a better place than I found it. So I'm always kind of striving to do that, whether it's in my everyday life or through this internship or my career. I just want to make the world a better place than it was.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. Everything, yeah. You want to make the world a better place. That's at your core. Okay. Absolutely. Emily, Dana, who else is left?
Yeah, I guess for myself, I just really have been trying to step out of my comfort zone this past couple of years, especially with everything that's going on in our society right now. So just being able to, you know, just educate myself and have conversations with other individuals and groups of people so I can just be more aware of social justice and things that are going on, not even just in the city of Chicago, but in our country. And this is a huge reason why I wanted to work with y'all, especially for this internship. So this is just very eye-opening for myself moving forward.
Okay. So in that context, Luke, why do you fight? Because that's all great. That's all sort of on the edges of the work. But what really is that core? You know, we're showing you people, we know why AOC fights. You can hear it every time she stands up there and says something, right? We know, and you watch the documentary on her, she was a waitress. Now she's a, I mean, come on. What a liberation story. We know why Ali fought. He fought for, for years. And same thing with Kendra and the young people on the South Side. We know why they fought for it. Why are you fighting, Lucas?
I would just say I'm fighting so we don't repeat the mistakes that we've made in the past. And then, so we're just educated as a country as a whole.
Okay. So you don't want to repeat the same mistakes made in the past. Are you fighting for what that's like against an output, right? It's an output. What's the input? Why? Why would you not want to repeat the mistakes in the past? I want you to dig deep into that core of self-awareness.
I guess
if you don't have the answer now, it's fine. But I think everybody here needs to increase their self-awareness because, as you could probably see, it's based on you, Lucas, what you said, this is a long-term fight, right? You mentioned the history, right? And so at some point, you've got to figure out why you're fighting to keep you going the rest of your life. This is not going to be, oh, I'm done fighting. Let me go do, no. Once you're on this path of liberation, it is a long-term contract with yourself and with the people around you. Yeah? Okay, think about that. Eli.
Because if we don't, then who else will? I mean, we can't put it off on somebody else to advocate on our behalf or other people's behalves.
Okay, that makes sense. It's your time. We have to do the hard work. Okay, cool. And why are you fighting? Why are you fighting, Eli?
Because our system is antiquated, and we need to relay that to everybody, not just elected officials, that what's going on isn't acceptable in many different reasons, and that we would need to bring up society and laws and everything up to modern day standards.
Okay. I can do that. Anybody else? Who else didn't speak? Share. Go ahead, Dana.
So I care about society's future, and kind of like what Eli said, like there's a lot that needs to be changed, and if you don't get involved, like who's gonna do it? It's so easier just like sit back and watch from a distance, but change can occur if like you actually get involved.
Okay. This is not a observation sport, y'all. This is a contact level. All right. Change has to happen with the self, with myself, right? How do I expect to change the world if I can't change myself? Absolutely. Emily, anybody else speak or not speak? Who else? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, mine's kind of similar to what a lot of other people have said, but I fundamentally just don't really think that anyone is better or massively different than anyone else or deserves different access to happiness. I think it was Owen that said everyone deserves to be happy. And so just kind of fighting to give people the tools they need to overcome whatever is preventing them from accessing that, whether it's like systems or like economic equality is a big focus of mine, and like, or in school to be a therapist to help people overcome any emotional, you know, things that are distracting them from pursuing what matters most to them, I guess.
Cool. Absolutely. I mean, the notion that everybody has the right to live to their full potential, right? And those barriers and those challenges, whether it's physical therapy, trauma informed, whatever it is, I hear it. I hear it. And then why everyone went? Thumbs up if you went. Tom, why are you fighting?
I hate bullies. And I have a belief in grassroots democracy that it is our right and charge to take control of our society, to make a society of justice and beauty for all. And that some of us have privileges and powers, and it makes it incumbent upon us to act in this way. So I don't like bullies picking on people and pushing them down. It gets me going. So we want to get rid of bullies and make sure everybody has what they need to be the best selves they can possibly be. And I would say that's it for me.
Cool. That's huge, right? Right? That's huge. I fight for all the reasons you've all mentioned. I don't know, my dad just taught me that, you know, to whom much is given, much is expected. And so I've been bred for leadership. I don't know if you know, but my dad was an officer in the Marine Corps. I'm the son of an officer, Marine officer. And so I mean, he wasn't as strict as other kids. I mean, he's a great dad, but he definitely was like from the get-go, yeah, you're not training you to be, you know, out there. So I've always believed I was trained and bred to be able to lead and fight for the little guy, for the little person, fight those bullies, all the reasons you mentioned. But I fight for my kids. I fight for my kids' friends. I fight for those generations that will benefit from my work. 7 generations down, we talk about in organizing. And I want my children to inherit an earth and a world that they deserve. You know, I fight for them. I'm nervous that when my son Jonathan's already tall, he's 10, by 12 or 13, he might be, you know, one of those kids that gets, you know, racially profiled, God forbid. So I'm fighting to make sure that they're safe. And so that's why I fight. I fight for my wife and my friends, and fight for Tom and all of us. So I'm here, locked in for 3 decades, going hopefully for the next 2-3 decades. So I think it's important in anything to understand and connect to why you are fighting, right? That's going to keep you going. You know, hold on to that, explore that, you know, beyond the words. You know, I want you to connect with the emotion and the feeling of why you fight, right? Because you're going to need that every day. You're going to need that as you come into this world as full social responsible Adlerian practitioners. Cool.
I'll just say in closing, one last thing is, you know, you hear this phrase, what do you stand for? Like as if you stand up, you get up out of your chair. That's something you can't sit down. So sometimes we say, what's the fire in your belly? What keeps you up at night? Or what do you stand for? And we recall the quote from Frederick Douglass from last week that had that same echo. In other words, if you don't fight, if you're a bystander, if you just put up with stuff, guess what? It ain't going to change.
All right. Cool. So thank you, Tom. So this is our Civic Lab mantra, and the history behind this is Tom. It was Tom's, but then we had a huge discussion about making this sort of our cornerstone framework in terms of campaign work. So this is sort of what we propose for you to consider, and when you were talking about campaign work, about fighting. So how many people have given money to a candidate or a cause? Raise your hand if you have, so I can see it. Okay, keep your hands up. Why did you give? You share why you gave that money? To who or to what, whom or to what? And then why did you give that money? Who rose their hand? Celia, Eli, Emily, Luke, Owen, Wyatt, Dana, you never gave money to a candidate or a cause? Never? Okay, interesting. Never undergrad, I'm gonna buy that brownie to help, kids in Africa or anything like that? No? Okay, so you did, okay. I mean, I know that's sometimes where it starts, right? I mean, I'm just being real with you. I raised $25,000 to help our brothers and sisters in Nicaragua when I was an undergrad at Earlham College, right? And we did that all through bake sales to help them with their development projects up in Esteli, Nicaragua. So why did you give that money, Celia, and to which cause and whom?
I'm trying to remember the specific organization. It was a while ago, but it was to fight against animal abuse. And that's something I'm very passionate about. And just the thought of it makes me cringe, and it shouldn't be a thing. It shouldn't be happening. And that's why I donated, because the thought of it makes me so angry that people could do that to animals.
Okay, absolutely. What about you, Eli? You rose your hand?
Yeah, so I've donated to a few different causes, but the main reason that I've donated is because I realize how expensive grassroots campaigning is and how much money that requires to get a successful campaign off the ground.
Okay. And then I saw Emily raise your hand. You said you gave to a candidate or a cause. Why?
Similar reasons, just because I know that a little bit can still contribute, even if it's just a tiny bit. And then also back in June, I donated to some like bail funds because I wasn't physically in a place where I could contribute my presence. So that was like all I could offer from where I was physically.
Okay. All great reasons why. And that, that's just sort of thinking about this process. And so what we want you to consider and think about why you donated in the past or potentially in the future, we're going to share this mantra with you. And this is something that, if you know nothing else, this is something that you can grab onto and explore, right? And so for me, I've been doing this work for decades. Dozens and dozens of enterprises, both nonprofit, dozens and dozens of electoral campaigns and grassroots campaigns. I worked on 2 mayoral races in Chicago at the senior level of leadership. I've deployed thousands of volunteers to campaigns across the board. And so we want you to consider this order of business when you're thinking about campaigns. The first bubble is called message, right? The idea of the message, right? And the idea is that if you know nothing else, you want to be clear that your candidate or whoever you're supporting has a message that speaks to you, right? Or that reflects your values or reflects sort of your world perspective on this planet, right? The second part we call as members, with all those people there. And the third one is called money, right? It's called message, members, and money. And they go into that order when you're looking at campaigns, right? Now, oftentimes, what do we usually see? Do we see that? We often see what lead campaigns? Money, right? Right? We see the money, then we see some of the people, and then the message is often sort of pasted up to some type of generic brand of patriotic, rhetoric about, save people, all this stuff, right? But we believe that effective campaigns rooted in social justice and rooted in social change, we believe that it's critical to be clear and concise about what the message is. How is that message going to change the situation? And then you look at the members, you look at the people, right? The people that are involved in the campaign, the people that are moving the campaign forward. What do they look like? How are they committed, right? And then following that, it would be the money, right? And that makes sense in some respects, right? Because in fundraising, people fund people, right? People give to people because it's all about trust, right? So when you're assessing a campaign strategy, consider what the message is. Does it include what you think is the fundamental need for change or the issues, right? And then consider the people. Who are the people running the campaign? Who's the candidate? You know, do they reflect your values and your beliefs, right? And then the money is right, and that's the issue, right? You mentioned, Emily, that a little bit goes a long way. Is it all just five billionaires donating to this candidate, right? Or is it what's been happening? People donate an average of $3, $7 to this candidate, and thousands of people donating, right? Right? Or is the money coming from special interest groups, right? That got their hands in the politician pocket, the NRA, big pharma, et cetera, right? So message, money, and members is a mantra that will help you sort of analyze campaign strategy and campaigns out there going forward. Tom, you want to jump in from your take?
Yeah. So what Jonathan is saying is if you think about it, a lot of times we get asked for money. So you get an email, you get something in the physical mail, or sometimes you might get stopped by a street team person, down in the loop or something. And it's the money is they want the money right away. And if you read the email or if you spend a half an hour talking, maybe they'll explain you why. But we see a lot of fundraising across the board for not just political things, but for charity. And we just want to remind you, and I think you heard a little bit about it from your own colleagues here reflecting, is the message is the motivation. What is the cause? How are they speaking about it? Is it genuine? Does it touch your soul? And if it doesn't, then you're really not going to go any much further down this path. And if you're ever in a situation where you've got to build an organization or a campaign, really that's where you start. And even though we're just saying message as it was just a little one word, it really stands for a process of being very thoughtful and deliberate about what it is you're asking for. What is the vision? Maybe that's another way to put it. What is the vision that the ask is reflecting? And it should be obvious to you if you're listening to a candidate or reading some literature, or if it's not, then don't engage. I think that's what we're trying to get across.
Excellent. Anything else? Any other comments? Does it make sense to you all? I mean, thinking about give you a chance to digest that, looking back at campaigns like, oh yeah, that message was incredible. Yeah, or yeah. Have you all, any of you been involved in campaigns in the past? How was that experience, Eli?
It's really hard. It's a really hard job, but it's also very rewarding. Yeah, it's absolutely exhausting. You work a ton, but then at the end, it's all worth it.
Why did you participate in that campaign?
So I've worked more in the nonprofit sector on private campaigns, particularly with refugees, and that's I'm very passionate about that. So that's why I was working with that for a while. Politically, I also worked on the Elizabeth Warren campaign for a little while.
Yeah.
And
but
I love her.
Right. And so when you said it's really hard and exhausting.
Wait a minute. Did you say the words "you love her"?
Yes.
All right. Now that's it in a nutshell. All right. Civic love.
That's the message.
And if we had more time, we could unpack that, right? About it's only one word. I love her is what you said, but it really what I'm hearing is you read her, you heard her speak, you read her documents, you observed her history, like her record of service. She had a campaign platform. She had lots of documents for you to absorb. You could check her manner. I mean, if you ever met her personally or you saw her on the television or what have you, or at a rally, you had a chance to check her to see if she's bullshitting you or does she seem to be genuine, right? All that is what I take from the word love. And that is what it takes. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. And the reality is, Eli, you have to love her. You have to be that passionate because it's exhausting. Whatever you give is whatever you give. It could be money or my volunteer time, and my time is precious, right? And so you have to be that in sync with that message, with that brand, with that person, right? To be able to put your time into that campaign, right? That's across the board, right? Find that passion. You got to actually say, I love this candidate. I believe everything, you know what I'm saying? You got to be that bought in terms of your investment of time and resources, right? Because everybody's times and resources are precious, right? Cool. Thank you for sharing that story.
Right.
Anybody else got a riveting story? No?
I was
Anybody
gonna
else?
say, oh, you go, sorry.
Go ahead, Lucas.
I was gonna say, when I was when I was an undergrad, I got the opportunity to canvass for a mayor in the city or the town that I was going to school at. So that was pretty eye-opening for myself.
What was eye-opening about it? What's your
Just how
takeaway?
much time and effort it really takes. So my friend and I, we were going door to door, knocking on people's doors, providing them with information.
It's a lot of hard work, right? Tedious work, door knocking, contact work, door knocking, door to door, right? Putting yourself out there, right? Hitting the pavement. It's a lot of that going on in these campaigns. Absolutely. Right?
Was
And if
really,
you're gonna put all the energy into that, if you're gonna do all that, you better believe in that message, right? If you're gonna be a member, you better believe in that message, right? Why would you do that? Why would you go through all that? Right? Cool.
Exactly.
And I'll just say
Awesome.
one thing that this conversation triggers for me, if I'm the candidate or the person who is trying to activate my members to give money and to give effort, I don't want to squander that love. I don't want to squander that trust. That is a precious thing in today's society, or in any society, really. So if I'm the candidate and I'm trying to get you, Eli, to work for me, and I'm successful, then we have a relationship. Even though I've never met you, I have a responsibility to you to not squander that love or betray the trust that you've placed in me. And that is a high bar, and it should be a high bar. And we expect it of every public person that we work with, and so should you. So good for you that you invested your civic love in someone, and hopefully you were rewarded, even if that particular candidate was not victorious.
That's right. All right, so just keep that in your mind. Message, money, and members, because the money flows if you got the people behind you. People will donate what they got. If they believe in you and they buy into you, the money and the love will flow. And right, and we're seeing this happening, right? Look what's happening with the governor of New York, squandering that trust. I mean, it's unbelievable. Decades of support for that family in the Northeast. So, okay, cool. Next.
Okay. So we will now reference a resource that is, and some other resources that are in the chat, and they are in your Basecamp space. So some of the things we're going to be talking about, these resources are available for you for download, and there's even more that we're not even going to cover. But this particular guide we find very fun and useful and sort of graphic. It's called Getting Ready to Run. So the Campaign Workshop is an awesome organization that trains people all across the country to run for office. And they have a lot of good publications, and you're free to look at their website and download. We have quite a few of their resources that we use ourselves. But this one is fun. It's called Are You Ready to Run? So if you're someone who's thinking of a career in public service, and you're thinking maybe at some point you would stand for public office, or maybe you have a friend or a colleague and they are thinking of that, this will help you or that person. So guess what's at the top of the list? Do you have a passion for public service? So the word passion is really big with us at the Civic Lab, if you haven't already figured that out. This is not an intellectual exercise. This is not something that I'm going to argue you into doing, or I'm going to shame you into doing. You either have a passion to serve or you don't. And don't do it because your father did it or your mother did, like you're inheriting the family business, because we do see children of politicians, and Andrew Cuomo is one of them. So not to say that children of politicians shouldn't go into public office, but make sure that you have a passion to serve. And if the answer is no, then go no further. There's plenty of other great things for you to do in civic life that you don't have to be an elected official. But if you do, then you continue down this path. Do you have an office in mind? Well, there's about 250,000 elected jobs in America. We're talking about everything from the President of the United States down to your school board or your library board, or many park districts have park commissioners. But school boards are probably the most common thing that maybe people think of, all across America. Just about every school district in America, with the exception of Chicago, has elected school boards. So that's a very common position that people often start out at in this space. So that could be something that motivates you. And it could be because you have children in a public school, or you love books and you want to take care of your public library. So that's the kind of a place. Again, what is the passion that is driving you? That will guide you. Okay, now it says here, are you running to see your name on a billboard? So if you go, yeah, I got a big ego, then you're straying from the true path of passion and service. We want people who want to serve others in this work. So if you've got a big ego, and there's a balance there. I mean, you sort of need to have an ego to put yourself out in front of others. So it's a balance. It's not possible to really be a good public servant or be an elected official if you're a wallflower, and for instance, you don't like to speak in public. So we move down this little chart, and it says, are you involved in your community? And if the answer is no, well, then that's a pause. So we've seen people who run for office with no prior involvement in community, and it doesn't usually work out well for us. Think of a certain president of the United States. That was his first elective office. It's not to say that someone who is stranger to the world of politics could not all of a sudden enter. We've seen that too often, but we'd like to suggest that you start small, and don't make your first effort running for the United States Senate. It's silly. It doesn't make any sense for, I would say, for 99.99% of the people. So if you're someone who thinks that you might have a path to public life, but you're not quite there yet, then you might start with joining a board of a local charity, or volunteering for some other entity, or somehow showing up for some campaign or cause, and either being a leader of that cause or being a significant player in that local cause. And that's how you get to know the local terrain. That's how you get credibility, frankly. Have people seen you around, before you start asking them for money and votes. It's just a little weird, but we see it often all the time. We like people who've already known to their people. We like people who are, say, have been on a school board, or helped clean up a vacant lot, or are known to be a great coach, say, for some sports team. They already are out there. They've already done things. And so that's good. That makes sense for us. Okay, so you continue down this little path, and now you've sort of checked off some of these earlier features. And now this little chart asks you, are you willing to ask your friends and family for money? Oh my goodness. Didn't we already discuss this? That people hate asking for money. We find in our world that is a thing that people just don't like to do. It's not cultural in the sense of we do it all the time. However, we're here to tell you that if you do choose this path of running for office or helping someone run, you must be very adept. I won't say comfortable, but you have to be okay with it, and you have to be good at it. And it starts with asking, guess who? The people you know best and who know you best. That is to say, your friends and family. And because later on, when you build a campaign, that's going to be looked at. These are public records, and it is perfectly logical for someone who you're asking for money who does not know you, but thinks you might be a worthy candidate, to take a look at the list of people who've given you money, and they don't see your friends and family. And that's like a what? That's a warning sign. And it's not a lot. It doesn't have to be a lot. Again, people's means are different. And a gift of $5 or $10 or $25 for somebody may be a very significant gift. Okay, so if the answer to your question is I hate asking for money, I won't do it, stop there. And that's okay. That's all right. Some people are independently wealthy and can donate to their own campaigns, and that's also acceptable, but it can't be the only source of revenue. In our opinion, we know some people are able to self-finance. That's not a good look for our work. All right, now you're continuing down this path, and you're looking pretty solid as a potential candidate. It down here at this last star, it says, "Have you done your politics?" So that's a shorthand for a lot of stuff. So back to the question of why are you fighting? What is your point? What is your position? Do you have some policies? So again, if you're working for the school board, your world is education, your world is children, your world is health and the status of your kids in your community. Like, can they read? Are they safe? Things of that nature. Well, you better know stuff about that. Yes, we're all learning on the job as we go along, but you have had to do some research. You've had to do some thinking about, well, what is it that I wish to do in this position? Should I be elected to school board or city council? You better know about your community. So you better have done that research in terms of the demographics and the history and context. I hope you get from our work that we're big on that. And that was our first training with you, was Chicago 101. You better know your space and your place and where you fit in and what's right about it and what's wrong about it. So that's a little bit about what we mean by doing your politics. If you have moved down this chart and you've got good check marks and you're kind of confident that where you're lacking, you have a way to fill in the gaps, then you are on the way to becoming a candidate. And this might be a 1 year, 2 year, possibly even a 3-year plan to move down this chart and get ready to run. And it often is the case that a person will run for an office, be it alderman or a city council person or county commissioner or something of that nature, school board even, and they don't win the first time. That is very normal. So this is not a casual commitment, I guess we could say. Can you balance this with another life of being a practitioner of social justice, being a counselor, being a clinician, being an artist, being a dad, being a mom? Yes, you can. And we really do hope that you would consider this as you go along. Jonathan, you got anything to add to this little pathway here? Are you still there? I can't see who's online anymore. He might have had to left.
I'm here. I would just say that even if you're not thinking of running, what this gives you is a way to assess your candidates that you want to support, right?
Right.
It's kind of like, not only should the candidate have a great message, clearly, but are they really, have they vetted themselves through this process? And you can tell, you can tell if the candidate's there for the limelight or if the candidate's been through this process at some level. So it's a great metrics just to be able to assess the campaign or the candidates that you support. I have been on, like I said, I've been on 2 mayoral campaigns, and it's a very hard thing to do because at some point you may not agree with everything your candidate says. So you really got to have that deep love and respect for that candidate that you support. And so this is just a great tool to assess your own, where you're at. I will say this time is always about pushing people to think about running. And honestly, you all said it. It's our turn. We're here for this. who else is going to do it? You keep saying, who's going to run for office in Chicago? Or, we got all these politicians, we got all this stuff happening. Well, someone's got to run. Someone from our camps and from our way of thinking has to run. It can't just be all, so there has to be a balance. This is a great way to test yourself and to test those people who are in your circles who might want to run. You take it back to them. Somebody's thinking about running. Take them through this process.
So I'm putting something in the chat for the Adler people. I'd like you to respond to that as we think about this afternoon. Why would Adlerians make great public servants? And why, if we had our way, we would have a campaign training track at Adler University that every single student there would have to take. We're not saying that everybody at Adler must run for office, but we do ask you to think about, and the same for our friends of DePaul. If you can think about the DePaulian, or I guess the better term is the Vincentian ethics. Why would people who believe in the Vincentian ideal and the Adlerian ideal, why would they make great candidates? Please put it into chat as you think about it. All right. So now let's say you or your colleague, you are deciding to run for office and you want to sort of get things set up. You sort of made your plans and you're thinking ahead. What does that look like? Well, it looks a little like this. This is sort of an org chart. This has to do for a local campaign, but the kinds of jobs that you see here are sort of what's needed. And sometimes one person, certainly in a small campaign, will hold more than one of these positions. But this is kind of what it looks like. And this comes out of a book by Professor Dick Simpson. And we'll show that to you in a moment. But you see it starts up there with the candidate, of course, who has a campaign manager. And that is not the candidate. So that is somebody who the candidate is trusting to sort of be the CEO, the chief officer of this campaign, to make sure all the moving parts go in the same direction and the work gets done. Now, a campaign is an unusual piece of business because it has a date certain that everything has to be done. What is that date? In every situation, what is the date that drives everything? Anybody? I don't hear anything. Come on.
What's the question?
What is the date? What is the date on the calendar that drives all this work?
Right. Good question.
There you go. Owen got it. Election day.
You get a free Chicago's Not Broke book going.
So if you're working in a campaign, there is a day for sure. It's usually a Tuesday, right? Upon which the polls open. Of course, now we have early voting and so forth, but certainly by the end of the day of the election, all the work has to have been accomplished. There's nothing left on the table. So that is an unusual kind of situation. It's a little like when I was in the theater and we had an opening night, and the show had to go up at 8 o'clock, on a certain night. You can't be still painting the set. You can't be typing up the program. You can't be wondering like, what should the actor speak here or should he speak over there? No, all that has to have been done way in advance. All right. So your campaign manager is your chief executive. Now you have a campaign chairman who is sort of a major fundraiser and is sort of a very trusted advisor to the candidate. And that person is a very close ally of the candidate and will be a close advisor and sort of looks over all the other piece parts. But as you see, the lines of authority come from the campaign manager. And as you can see, there's usually an office perhaps that needs to be staffed with volunteers usually. There's lots of public relations or messaging. So there's press releases. And now, of course, we have social media. So every tweet or meme or Facebook post must be thought of. And that has to happen in a certain order with a certain logic. there's a scheduler. So the candidate is often asked to speak, come here, go there, come to this fundraiser, speak at this PTA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can't do them all, and you have to do them in some kind of order. And so that is part of the scheduler's job. Now, we mentioned in our earlier work that Chicago is divided into 50 wards. So if you're running for an alderman of one of these wards, well, that's your universe, the boundaries of the ward. You want to know everything about that ward. And so if there's a parade in one part of the ward, if there's a pancake dinner at a church at the other end of the ward, you've got to know about all those things and figure out where do you show up with your materials. Now, as we also mentioned in Chicago and in many other places, each ward has what they call precincts, little pieces of the ward. And so in my particular ward here in Lincoln Park, in the 43rd ward, we have 40 precincts. I'm in precinct number 1. And so each precinct has, maybe 1,000 people, give or take. So now you'll see that each precinct has a coordinator. So part of my work, or the work of getting a campaign ready, is to say, well, who do I know who has come to me, that is from precinct 7? Oh, that's Jonathan. Oh, Jonathan is a good friend. Our kids go together to daycare. So that's how I know Jonathan. And I know he lives in 7. I'm going to ask him, Jonathan, would he be my guy, in precinct 7? And Cece, she actually signed my petition, and we had a good conversation. I know she's in precinct 22, and I'm gonna recruit her, and so on down the line. And each of these precinct coordinators has a specific set of duties and expectations. Again, all volunteer in our world, and so forth. You'll see over on the left something called volunteer coordinator and coffee coordinator. So volunteers can be used for so many things. We need to get petitions signed to get on the ballot. That's a volunteer. We need people to perhaps staff an event. So I'm going to have a little fundraiser over there at the hall, and I need someone to sit at the table, and I need someone to help clean up. Blah blah blah. I need someone to maybe serve the punch, make some good munchies to pass out. I may need someone to man the sound system. I may need someone to help video the event and record it, on and on and on. So there's many jobs that people can do in bite-sized chunks. Then you'll see something over there called coffee coordinator. So this is a very common position in grassroots campaigning, and it simply means that when I am the candidate, I want I would like Luke to help me out by having a coffee at his house, which means that Luke will invite 10 people that he knows. I'll give him the materials, whether it's an email or a physical letter. I'll give him some talking points, and Luke will email or reach out to his friends and say, I really like this guy, Tom Tresser. He's running for alderman, and I'd like you to come over to my house and meet him and hear him and see why I think he's a good candidate for our community. It's understood that Luke is going to be asking for money for his friends, so you got to be okay with that. And so what happens is Luke makes the email. He calls. He has to call. We always think that you must call. This is why we're going to be talking about calling in a little while. But Luke is going to call his friends and say, "Hey, Joe, are you going to be able to come by my house Thursday night at 7? And it'll be great. I'm going to be playing my new Smashing Pumpkins album or something." Or I'm gonna, I got some live entertainment. We have a friend who's gonna play the guitar for us. All right, so you get people to your house. You introduce the candidate, why you're excited. The candidate gives a little talk, 5-10 minutes, no more. There's a lot of networking and question answering. But after this little presentation where I'm the candidate and I've given my 5-minute, what is called a stump speech, That's a term you'll hear a lot. It's up to Luke to make the sale. So Luke might say something like, well, isn't that fantastic? You know, I'm so excited by what Tom just said. I'm going to give a check for $100 right now. And there you go, there's the check. And I'd like to hear from everybody in the room, kind of put people on the spot a little. Who's in? And I've seen it done many different ways, where you simply ask people, are they in or out? I've seen people say, who here will give $5? Who here will give $10? So there's lots of different ways to close the deal. But at the end of the day, we're trying to walk away with some campaign cash. Anyway, you get the picture. Now, all this is coming from a book called Winning Elections in the 21st Century by Dick Simpson, who is quite the expert here. And he's given us permission to give you the chapter from the book where this chart comes from. So that is in chat. And he was the alderman of the 44th ward in Chicago from 1971 to 79. He's been teaching politics at the University of Illinois for 50 years. Okay, so he's forgotten more about this work than most of us will ever know. Now, we want to move on from that to tell you a little bit about sort of the larger picture of how we see politics moving in our society. It's true, we do want people to run for office. We do really believe that people of good hearts should be governing us. And I'm seeing some stuff in the chat here. I hope you'll add to it about why your kind of people from Adler and DePaul would be very useful in public life. But that's only part of it. So what you see here is called the Wellstone Triangle, named for Paul Wellstone, who was the senator from Minnesota until he tragically died in a plane crash. Oh, I'm going to say maybe 18 years ago with his wife and daughter. But this is how, and he was a professor of history, by the way. And how he articulated politics would be something like this. Think of it like a triangle, and we're always running around the edges of this triangle. We're never staying in one corner overly long. It's a process that moves. So you might say, over there in the blue corner of community organizing or labor or working community, you are raising issues. You are listening to people, you are agitating, you're bringing people together, you're convening through all kinds of different reasons and ways. And it may be because you're an environmentalist, it may be because you're trying to start something or stop something. And there's a lot of outreach, and there's a lot of growing, and there's a lot of learning. And that is part of the work. And out of that comes some kind of an agenda, some kind of public policy demands that have been articulated and lifted up by this work. And from that comes a campaign platform. And from that triggers more election and convening work. So think of it this way. Say you are somebody who is very concerned about the environment, and there's a vacant lot in your community full of crap and trash and rusted car bodies, and you convene a group of people to clean that lot up. So you're bringing people together, you're learning about who owns that lot, you've got to find a way to get people to work together, you've got to get trash bags and shovels, and you've got to maybe have a fundraiser to buy a dumpster or to hire a dumpster. There's a lot of work that goes into this. And say that you've done it, and that lot is now clean. Now, what are you going to do with it? So now you've got these bunch of people that you've worked with over a couple of Saturdays. You all got sweaty, and you had music, you had fun, maybe you had a cookout. But at the end of the day, you did it. You cleaned up that lot. You're feeling really good. But are you done? No, you got these group of people, and you're going to ask them, well, what should we do? What have we learned? And you might say, well, I think we need a law that says anybody who lets a lot crap like this, the city has to take the lot away, or we have to find somebody. Now you're talking about a law, talking about policy. Well, who has the right to enforce that law or to put that law on the books? Oh, well, I guess it's the city council. Well, let's go talk to our councilman and say if we think that this law is needed, and the councilman won't hear you, won't talk to you. So now you think, well, heck, I could be just as good a councilman as that doofus. I'm going to run in 2 years. Now you've made the complete turn of this triangle. So now you're a candidate for city council. Guess what? You've gone back to those same people that you met all those 2 years ago when you first started cleaning up the lot. And there you go. That's a little bit what we mean by the Wellstone Triangle. Is that making sense? Does that land for you? What do you make of that? Let's pause.
Reactions, observations. What are you thinking? What's your thought process? Share. I want to hear what's going on in your heads. Have you heard about this before? I see you guys thinking. What are you thinking about?
It's not part of, you don't really see that behind the scenes grassroots part on the news. It's not, excuse my language, the sexy part of it. Sounds like hard work, really getting after it and organizing. It sounds tough.
Nice. Yes.
Huge.
This is work. That's right. This is work. It's deliberative work. And yeah, sexy. Yeah, I would agree with that characterization. It doesn't make the news, but we think it's the real heart and beating soul of public work. The stuff that maybe doesn't make the news probably should make the news.
Kind of like you could use an iceberg analogy. You look at an iceberg, right? You only see what, 5% of it? You don't see the full 95% underneath the ocean, right? Underneath the water. This is that 95% you don't see, right? This is the work that you don't see. So absolutely, thank you, Remedy. That's a huge takeaway. Any other takeaways? Any other observations, thoughts?
I was just thinking about, I put it in the chat, but I was just thinking about how as Adler students who would potentially want to run for office in some capacity, how we can contribute quite a bit, I feel like, because of our mission, the social justice mission. And I just think that we care so much about people, and that's integral when it comes to running for office, is to care about others. That's just what I was thinking.
Well, that is a simple but profound observation that I would put in. I would like make that over the fireplace. Like we care about people, like for sure, for real, not words, but real emotional care. Like if you're hurt, I'm hurt. Or as Jonathan has taught us, Ubuntu, I am because you are. So if you really believe that and live that, that is a wonderful thing. And it would be great to guide you for the rest of your life as a public servant. So you do notice that this is a very people-powered, this is very people-intensive, the work that we're speaking of here. This is not something you can do in your house by yourself. It's not something you can do on the internet. It can be helped or augmented, but this is an intense people contact sport, or for lack of a better word. This is getting out there with the folks in many different ways. Sometimes you're a teacher, sometimes you're a listener, sometimes you're a convener, sometimes you're an person who inspires, sometimes you're an entertainer, and sometimes you're a leader, right? And so this is with people, in relationship to people. You're a lifelong learner also, if you haven't figured that out by now. Any other thoughts or observations from what we've got come to so far?
Really good takeaways, guys. I'm impressed. I'm really excited about how you're taking this in. Anything else? How does it speak to you? Share out so we all can sort of pause it and learn from your thoughts and your ideas, your suggestions, responses. What about you, Wyatt? I see you biting your nails.
Oh no, I'm just thinking about it. Kind of what comes to mind for me is like this is all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and we only see so little of politics. And then it makes me wonder like what else is going on behind the scenes, like the stuff that you don't hear about, like the corruption side, you know, where it's like so much of this positive work goes in. Like imagine how much negative stuff goes in for some of these politicians as well, you know.
Tom, you want to respond to that? That's a great thought. Thank you for positing that.
Yeah. Well,
amazing,
again, you know, our news media is really pretty pathetic, and what they choose to focus on is problematic. And yes, corruption does make the news, and sadly, we have too many people who are in public office who did not take our lessons. You know, who would not be good candidates as far as our politics are concerned, the way we're trying to teach. But yet people are in public life for what we think are the wrong reasons, and that includes personal gain, like I'm just going to make some boku bucks, or people who are twisted and get off on power. And we see not just in politics but other powerful people, usually men, use their positions for sexual advantages and other kinds of ways that they abuse people. Obviously, we think that's horrible, inexcusable, and to use your public life, your position of power and authority for these things is reprehensible. And as far as I'm concerned, there's no jail that's big enough that could hold these people. They should go right to prison right away. So it offends me deeply when a public servant abuses his or her office for these ways. And yeah, so that does unfortunately grab the spotlight, and it's bad because it makes it unpalatable, or it sends the wrong message, I feel, to the American people that being in public life is icky. You know, it's you've got to be twisted. You know, what's wrong with you? You want to be an alderman? You want to be the mayor? You must be some kind of a perverted person. That's horrible for us in America. We can't have that. So we are hoping to go the other way. We want people who are servant leaders, and we could have a whole workshop. I would love to do that workshop with you guys if you want one on servant leadership. But the point is, yeah, don't be discouraged or confused or distracted by the many stories of corruption. And unfortunately, there are many stories of corruption. That is a true thing, but we'll call those aberrations. That's how I would characterize it. That is not the norm for people in public life, in my estimation. That's a great thought. Other comments?
Anything else, guys? How does this tie back to your Adlerian? I mean, you all are learning Adlerian theory, right? Adlerian practice for you guys, and then of course for DePaul, it's the what's the DePaul practice, Tom? The ABC, the
St. Vincent.
St. Vincent practice. They're both social justice based practices, right? Right? Think about it. So, what are the three lives that you live as an Adlerian practitioner? Remember? Your personal life, your professional life, and your community life. And what does Adler talk about? How do you maintain those in balance with each other, right? So when Tom talks about the servant leader, or talks about this Wellstone training, whatever framework to give you, these are tools that you can, these are frameworks that you can absorb that are supposed to complement and are in alignment, strategic alignment with your core practitioner values that you're learning at Adler and at DePaul. Right? Keep that
Yeah,
in mind.
if anybody wants to put in the chat, who was St. Vincent and what do we know about him? That'd be cool.
That question in there?
CC said there's a whole class on Adlerian theory and perspective. I haven't taken it yet. Well, that's something to think about, and you could certainly look up that up, and there's some documents that Adler has posted on its various websites that talk about the socially responsible practitioner, and it's connected to these concepts. So, in a way, we're kind of talking about the socially responsible politician, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Huge.
related to what we're speaking about here. Yeah. Who was St. Vincent? Who was Adler? Okay. So again, we can always return to this, at any time, but let's move on. Here are some of the resources that we have parked for you in the base camp space. So there is the resource called Are You Ready to Run? That's the little booklet that had that chart in it. You've got Winning Your Election the Wellstone Way. That's actually a 306-page book. You probably don't want to print it out, but you can certainly put it on your Kindle or read it on your phone or whatever. That is quite a lot of material and workbooks that go into all the positions that we mentioned so briefly on that campaign chart. So this is going to tell you, what a campaign fundraiser does. What does it mean when you hear the terms GOTV? Does anybody know what GOTV means? GOTV. Shout it out or put it in the chat. What is GOTV?
Get out to vote.
Yeah, put it in the chat. Put it in the chat. Yeah, right. Without the GOTV, there is no, it's a party that nobody comes to. So at the end of the day, you gotta get one more vote than the other guy. That's how you win in politics. It's pretty simple. Yeah, here's someone putting into St. Vincent thank you, about who St. Vincent was. Some people call him one of the first organizers. I know maybe Jesus Christ of Nazareth might have been the first organizer. It depends on your, how you look at religion. Different great religious figures and prophets were certainly organizers. But St. Vincent actually organized giant nonprofit charities, I guess you would call them today. He took care of thousands and thousands of people. So he was certainly a huge organizer. Let's put it that way. Certainly a very effective organizer. Okay, also in the space for you is a ward map. So this is the basic nucleus of Chicago politics, and a 50-ward book. So each ward has got a page that shows you sort of like what's in the ward in terms of schools and parks, and then a very handy book of social and area community indicators. So as we mentioned in the earlier class, Chicago is divided into 77 community areas. So each area in this book has like the demographics, of who lives there and the poverty level and all kinds of good things. And again, you should know this about your community anyway. But certainly if you're thinking of running for office or helping out in a campaign, this stuff is absolutely fundamental. You cannot operate a trustworthy or effective campaign in ignorance of these facts. And so we put them there for you. And there's many, many more things like that, but we thought this would be a good little sprinkling for you. Now, in approaching public life, whether it's social justice or running for office, we think it's useful to think about what we call the 4 R's. The 4 R's. So these might be, I don't know, mindsets perhaps, or approaches to the work that would result in specific strategies and ways of working, how you might work with others, and how you might be perceived by others. And so here are the 4 R's. There is the reformer. So this is someone who is going to work within the existing system. Sometimes we say this is an inside job, and it's about making improvements. You're not talking about tearing the system down. You're talking about improving it. But then there's the resistor. Well, this is someone who might be more on the outside, perhaps, causing it to stop or be interrupted, or blocking it in some ways. This might be a protester, or someone who's calling out insistently bullshit. Someone who might be a little strident, someone who you might annoy you actually because they're challenging you in some way, and asking others to do the same. Don't buy that product. Don't be a soldier and go to war, as Muhammad Ali did. I'm going to place my body right here in the street, and I'm not going to let that van with the immigrants, the people who just got arrested, I'm not going to let that van pass. I'm going to lay down in the street. And so this often gets a lot of attention, and has its place in public life. Then there's someone who is a bit of a dreamer, someone who's looking at something and saying, that ain't right. I think we need to rebuild that thing. We need to make something different. And this is someone who might be doing a mutual aid, who might actually create something on the ground that models this new behavior that you're looking for. So you have someone creating a thing or a place or a space or a program, and we've seen tent cities, we've seen spaces of insurrection. So like Tahrir Square in Cairo. We've seen the Occupy spaces. So when there was Occupy Wall Street or Occupy LaSalle Street, we've seen people go out into the streets, say around Black Lives Matter, and they create spaces. And sometimes there's a whole like little infrastructure. So it could be lawyers there could be people with water, there could be people with medical training, reporters, people like scribing. And so we create these spaces. And then the last R is the big dreamer, the person who's trying to think in a very large way to reimagine the existing structure. So not only do I'm not happy with it, but I got an idea to replace it with something. And we make the point that you may occupy one or more of these spaces in your lifetime, or even in the same campaign. You might move from one to the other. And we ask you to be wary and respectful of these positions when others are presenting them to you. Sometimes they work together, and sometimes they work with friction. Jonathan, does that make sense? You guys?
I mean, you say it better than I do. You're really good at this. Ultimately, our fundamental belief is that we want these groups to work in alignment with each other, right? Oftentimes you see friction and conflict between the two, right? So let's be honest, if I'm a resistor, I'm out there protesting, and what do I think about the reformers? Somebody? Right? I'm protesting, we got shitty public education. There's a reformer who's doing what? Public education, right? What do you think my perspective would be about that reformer? Most likely, it's happening now, right? The reformers are soft. They take too long. Change has to happen now, right? There's all these sort of these rhetorics, these messages that come out of these camps, and in reality, in actual history and reality, we know that these 4 Rs are needed to make systemic change, right? So if they complement each other, there's more likely to be radical systemic change. The one example I can give you is the Black Panther Party, right? What do you think their group represents? Which R? Someone say it out loud. Which R do you think the Black Panther Party will fall under? Don't worry, say it. No feeling, say it.
I would say resist.
Right.
I fell into
Obviously,
resist.
right. They're the resistors, right? Self-defense, protecting Black people from police harassment, all that stuff, right? Right. That's what they're known for, right? But did you know that 2/3 of their work was social services? Who knew that? Raise your hand if you knew that. Right. They ran social services. And what service were they famous for? The one that if you do know about that. The free breakfast program. The free breakfast program. And which institution has adopted the free breakfast program in our society? I can't hear you. Unmute yourself.
Schools.
Yes. Bingo. So for whatever reason, intentional, unintentional, co-optation, however you want to define that intention, the reality is we have free breakfast programs in schools, public schools. And that model came from a resistor group. Started out with the Black Panthers providing free breakfast for Black kids before they go to school. You see what I'm saying? So that's a live actual example of where the ideas, the things can shape each other and are interrelated. A resistor group, and then you have reform taking place inside. So I always talk about inside outside strategy work. And as good organizers know those nuances. They know how that flows, the inside outside strategy, right? The pressure, the reform, the pressure, right? The Malcolm, the Martin, that whole framework. Because ultimately, if you line up all the values and the beliefs of all these people in these 4 Rs, you have probably 90% agreement on how people should be treated, values, beliefs, right? It's really the battle around that 5 to 10% that's taking place. So as lead practitioners, understanding that most people in the service sector fall under one of these Rs, and understanding what that R reflects, you are more likely able to navigate, right, and be of assistance to your clients, your participants. You'll know. You have to know what resistance looks like, what reform looks like, what recreation looks like, what reimagination looks like, how to tap into those approaches and frameworks and the groups and the people in those camps as a practitioner, right? Because why? All human beings are what? They walk into your door with complicated issues. We're not single issue people, right? Audre Lorde said that, right? Right. The person coming to help for you, they be coming in for therapy, but you must know they have complicated lives, they have multiple issues, right? So the more you know, the more effective you can be as a social practitioner. Okay? Cool. Thank you, Tom.
All right, and we'll just leave it at that. Is sometimes you need to be in one of these Rs to be effective, and sometimes you need to go out of it and be in another. And that is good strategic thinking, and it is good leadership to move freely.
And we could do a whole workshop on this. Like, I'm a resistor at heart, but I do a lot of reform work. So it's about finding your passion and then understanding how they can complement each other. And Tom is 1,000% correct. I have exercised all 4 Rs in one day of my work. It's amazing. Thank you, Tom.
I briefly this almost seems like a cycle. It seems like, once you get through the reform, the resist, the recreate, and then the reimagine, once you get to all 4 of those points, it seems like you can kind of go around many times over through this, what I would call a cycle.
Absolutely. Yes. It is very much a cycle. And they feed into each other, they intersect, they can support each other. And even if there's conflict, sometimes conflict is good. As Tom pointed out, tension is good. There's that accountability level, that experience level. Excellent point.
that it's a cycle, it's evolving, this is not a stationary process. I hope we're giving you the sense over our classes together that this work is fluid, it's an art and a science, and it reflects real human beings who are fluid themselves. Like Jonathan just said, even sitting here together talking, you're wearing multiple hats of father, student, learner, whatever. You're stressed, you're tired, you're energized. All these things are true things that happen to us as human beings. And when we try to move, change, you're trying to change laws and change hearts. These are the roles that we lift up. And as we're saying, you move through them in time and space, and sometimes doing them in the same day. Okay. Now to the practicalities of running for office. Bringing us back down, a little closer to ground level. In a place like Chicago, it is a lot of work. If you're running for a citywide office, you've got to get 12,500 signatures on your petition ballot. So that's to say, someone seeking to run for office for Mayor Lightfoot, if someone wants to replace Mayor Lightfoot in 2023, which is the next municipal election, they're going to have to present a minimum of 12,500 signatures. So this is a petition that's printed up. It's got to be a legal form. And anybody who is 18 years of older who lives in the city of Chicago can sign that petition. And that doesn't commit you to vote for that person, but it is saying, we think candidate Smith is a good candidate and should be on the ballot. However, we know that it's a dirty game in Chicago. Politics is like a blood sport here. That opposing lawyers from the other candidates, or in this case, perhaps the mayor herself, will challenge those signatures for various reasons. And if a signature is challenged, that is to say, the assertion is made that the person who signed this petition is not actually registered to vote, or does not live where they say they lived, that signature is invalid and cannot count to the 12,500 minimum. And so what we find, seasoned politicians will present perhaps 3 times the signatures, or even more, so to survive a challenge. Aldermen require around 500 signatures to run. There is a start date, which is printed in there's an official document. So these dates are outdated because they're from an early election, but they're kind of approximate. So basically, you cannot gather petitions until that start date. So if I'm gathering petitions for a race from July 28th, I may not present them. I must start when I'm told to start, and I have to stop when I'm told to stop. So there's usually a last day or notification that says, this is the day when you have to file all your papers and present them in a proper form to the Board of Elections. And so that's how we know who's presenting themselves for candidacy. And believe me, it's a little sticky wicket. It's easy to do wrong. We wish it were easier. I mean, this is, again, a major piece of democracy work. Talk about being unsexy. How someone gets on the ballot is a big deal in Chicago and across America. We wish it were very easy to run for office in this place, but it's not. Now, Chicago has what's called nonpartisan elections. There's not a primary by party. So we just had a presidential election, as you may recall. There were a number of candidates on both sides of the aisle. There were many candidates who wanted to be the Republican nominee. There were quite a few who wanted to be the Democratic. It worked out over the course of the primary season that the incumbent, Donald Trump, was the Republican nominee. And it turned out that former Senator and former Vice President Joseph Biden became the Democratic nominee. And then they met in the general election. We don't have that in the city of Chicago. So if you're running for alderman or city clerk or mayor, you do not declare your party, you just run. And so there could be many candidates. We had, I believe, 16 candidates running for mayor in February of 2019, and that's okay. However, in order to win outright, one of those candidates needed 51% of the vote, or 50% plus one. No one got it. Instead, what we have in Chicago is the top two candidates have what is known as a runoff. So again, in Chicago in February of 2019, there was that first round of elections for these offices. And if you were one of those candidates who got 50% plus one, congratulations, you're elected. But if you're one of those candidates who didn't, and Lightfoot was one of them, so you may remember that in that early election, the two finalists were Lori Lightfoot and Tony Preckwinkle. Lori Lightfoot was the outsider. Tony Preckwinkle was and remains the incumbent president of the board of commissioners of the county of Cook. But interestingly, they got 17% and 14% respectively. And all the rest of the votes were split amongst these other 15 candidates. I think the next guy I think it might have been Bill Daley, got 11%. Didn't make the cut, so sorry. Susan Mendoza, like 7%, so on and so forth. So the top two candidates from that election, Lori Lightfoot and Tony Preckwinkle, were now your main candidates, and they met again in the ballot box on April 2nd. So it was about, a month or so later. So they were able to hit the campaign trail and make the case, that you should vote for me. And so the election was held on April 2nd, 2019. Lori Lightfoot won overwhelmingly, carrying every one of the 50 wards, every single one. It was a wipeout with about, I'm going to say, 70% of the vote. So it was a slaughter, basically. Okay, that's how it works in Chicago, and so it will work again in 2 years when the current aldermen are up for re-election, as is the mayor, the city clerk, and the city treasurer. All right, we are now ready for your ward reports. I will stop sharing my screen, but continue to record the meeting so people can sort of take this screen and present. So if you remember, this is what we're asking you to report on. Each of you have picked one alderman from the city of Chicago. And we're asking you to sort of give us the headline from the 2019 election. We're asking a few things. What was the turnout? So if Alderman Smith is the incumbent, well, what was the contest? It was Smith versus who? We're asking for the top contributors, and we're asking you for your kind of gut assessment based on what you know from your research. What can you tell us about this alderman? And do you think they're vulnerable for the next election? All right. Handing it over to you guys. So let's start with CC.
One sec, I'm just pulling up my document here.
And just as a heads up to everyone else, we're hoping that you can put this information you're going to share with us in a Word document and just put it into Basecamp. So you can give us the highlights now. Okay, Cece, who did you have? What was your ward?
I am Ward 44, so I had Thomas Tunney, and I kind of looked more at the demographics of my ward rather than the alderman. Sorry, I must have misunderstood that, but I wanted to look at the demographics, and I'm trying to pull it up right now, and of course it's being difficult. If someone else is ready, they can go. I don't know what's going on with my computer.
Okay. All right. How about Eli? What do you got for us?
So I did the 48th ward since that's the ward that I live in.
All right.
And so Harry Osterman is the incumbent in the ward. He is a big proponent of TIFs, of course. And it looks like, just generally speaking, some of the platforms that he's been supporting as far as the TIFs go, it looks like he's supported 4 different individual ones within his ward, which total to about, let's see, about 50 million, actually $60 million. And that is almost entirely going to new development for housing. So right now in Edgewater, 35% of housing is owner occupied. The national average, or the Chicago-wide average, is 45%. So it's obviously a little bit lower than the rest of Chicago on the average basis. And this is particularly alarming just because the rent over the past 10 years has increased by 31.9%. And just from looking at the particular funding projects through the ward map, through the TIF map, I mean, it looks like it's a lot of higher end, big money rentals. And of course, I'm sure they'll comply with affordable housing, but it's obviously not intended to be affordable housing. Let me see what else. There's also, just by looking at the demographic data, I can kind of assume that this is an incoming area for a lot of people in kind of a transition phase between like college or education and then their kind of full-time career. So it looks like it's about 25% of people are between the age of 20, or the 25% of the population is between 25 and 34 years old. 52% of the whole population is unmarried, with an average of 3.3 people per household. So just kind of inferencing there that means that a lot of people are young professionals trying to find more permanent housing solutions. So yeah, that's.
Well, what was Harry's margin? How did he do in the 2019 election?
I didn't write it down. I was trying to pull it up while the last person was going.
So everybody knows where to get that information, right? The Board of Elections.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's part of the assignment. So you gotta either do it now or do it soon. We want to know if Harry had an easy time of it. Did he win by the skin of his teeth? Like, did he walk away with it? That'll help us understand a little bit about how he's seating in his ward. Cool. Anything about you'll bring us to that information before we're done, Eli. But is there anything else you tell us about Harry Osterman as an alderman that came up?
Sure. He's kind of, just from looking at his platforms, he seems like kind of the type of Democrat that is like liberal, but not like an activist type liberal, just kind of like the old school Democrat. And I also kind of find it, I don't know, slightly alarming that a white man has been like in charge of a very high percentage of minority areas for such a long time. I can't remember the amount of time that he's been in office.
Right.
But it's been a while.
Okay. So again, these are good observations, and you can start to see how, putting our collective brains together to try to look at these factors would help us understand, and come to some judgment at some point. If we like Harry's job, do we think he's doing a good job? Is he leaving some people out? These are the kinds of questions that you'd be asking. These are the kinds of facts that you'd be gathering in order to be able to assess the career of an elected official like Harry Osterman, whose mother was the alderman before him, by the way. So his mother, Kathy Osterman, was very well known in public life. Okay. All right. Emily, what do you got?
All right, so I did the 46th ward in Uptown because that's where I live. And our alderman is James Kappelman. He's been the alderman here for, I think, since like 2011. I think he ran in 2007 and lost, and then he's won pretty much every election after that. Most recent election, he won absolutely by the skin of his teeth by literally 25 votes. And which it was a much larger margin in the general election, and then in the runoff, it was literally 25 votes. He beat out a woman named Marianne Lalonde. But James is he's a Democrat. His bio on on the Alderman website, or the ward office website, describes him as like a former teacher. He was a social worker. He's worked in nonprofits. So he's very much got that social justice background. He's a member of the LGBTQ community, and has done a lot of work with like HIV. So he's got like the social justice resume. And then I'm looking at his donors. So in his like career as an alderman, he is the chairman of the zoning committee. And so because of that, he gets a lot of money from like development companies. And there is a lot of like, there are a lot of CHA properties in Uptown, and there are a lot of like unhoused individuals and transitional housing like residences in Uptown. So it does make sense. But he's also getting a lot of money from like that big like Montrose and Montrose and Sheridan, that like 811, that new building.
Yeah,
Gave
that
him
was
a
a
good chunk of money.
huge controversy.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks really, I don't know. I think it's kind of an eyesore. It's like enormous and too shiny, but yeah, they gave him a lot of money. And then other property management groups from around the country, like there's a big one, M. Fishman, that's more in Logan Square and more west, and they donated a lot of money, even though they only have one property in this ward. So I don't know. It seems like there's probably some politics going on behind the scenes with development.
So it raises a flag. I think that is a justifiable concern. So you can be on either side of that coin. You could be pro-development, and you think that having these high rises like the one that you mentioned on Montrose and the Park is good. Or you might say, yeah, I'm not sure. It seems like a gentrifier. It doesn't seem to fit the needs of most of the demographics of the community. What's going on there? So this is how you arrive at this situation. We're not gonna come down either side of it, but this is the kind of research you need to do to ask the right questions, and then you can decide for yourself or share. Say you had a team of people in your community, and you're learning yourselves, and you can sort it out. Like, what do we make of this? Okay. What else can you tell us about Mr. Kappelman?
That's kind of all I got.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you consider him vulnerable?
It seems like he might be, just given the last election and how close it was. But it's also just from what I understand I haven't lived in this neighborhood very long, but it sounds like people like him. So I'm curious to understand more about why it was so narrow, I guess, and what Marianne Lalonde's appeal was. That election was before I lived over here, so I don't
talk about the skin of your teeth.
Yeah.
25 votes. So one of the lessons there is, I think, when someone says, I'm just one person, what's my, I'm tired. I'm not going to go to the polls today. 26 people can't go to the polls, and it would be a different person running, being the alderman. I mean, that's the people in like two buildings, it's like, a couple of softball games. I mean, it's 26 people is not a lot of people. So that's a fantastic lesson. Thank you. Dana, what do you got? Oh, Cece, you want to go?
Yeah, I can go really quick. Sorry, my computer was being
Go ahead.
difficult.
So you're Ward 44, Tom Tunney.
Yeah, I'm Ward 44, and I was actually very interested in looking into the demographics of my neighborhood, just out of curiosity. But my neighborhood is very white and is very privileged. And I was looking at the maps, and there's a fire station and police station within the ward, several access to resources, it seems like. And I was kind of comparing to the other wards just out of curiosity. And it's like the amount of access to resources that we have compared to other wards is astounding to me. So that's kind of what I was looking at. But then I looked at, I was able to find some information on Thomas Tunney. And right when I looked him up, I thought it was interesting because it brought up him with the Ricketts family, who apparently own the Chicago Stadium. And I just moved here in October, so I don't know too much about the area, but apparently they kind of got into a bit of an argument because Thomas Tunney didn't want to renovate the stadium per se necessarily, but rather was more focused on the rooftop bars surrounding the stadium that was giving him money for his campaign. So he was more focused on those, but I thought that was an interesting relationship that I had with them. And actually one of the member of the Ricketts family called him very disrespectful. And I was like, oh, wow. But he's been the alderman since 2003 after Bernie Hansen retired.
Yep.
But looking through like the voter statistics, it seems like he pretty consistently wins by quite a few votes. So it
Yes.
seems like people are happy with him.
Yes, his margins are comfortable, I would say.
Yeah.
He is a restaurant owner.
Yes, it said he was like, oh, I can't remember the name, the
And Savage.
restaurant committee. Yeah.
And Savage.
Exactly.
So that is a super popular restaurant. There's like 4 or 5 of them, I think, but it's a landmark on Belmont that, you know, just about anybody from the near north side has had breakfast there, and it's very powerful in the gay community. He himself is a member of that community. So there's a gay caucus in the city council of, I think, maybe 4 or 5 alder folk, but he was, I believe, the first.
Yeah, it was talking about how he's very concerned about HIV and AIDS, and being able to help the gay community, and he seems to be a pretty big advocate for that. So
Yes.
he gets quite a bit of votes, so it's
Right.
comfortable.
Yeah. So I think we would say, you know, if somebody was unhappy with Tom Tunney as an alderman, they would have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, 100%. They would have a lot of work to do. I mean, he's been in for so long. Well, now I want to look more on him because I kind of missed the mark. But I want to look more in on him because it seems like people like him and that it would be really hard to replace him. So that's interesting.
Well, so he opposed the use of public money for some of the renovations, and he had questions about some of the things that the Ricketts family wanted to do physically, you know, in the proximity to the stadium. And so he wasn't really playing along with them, you know, and he's like doing his job, I think. And they got someone to run against him, someone who did publicity for the Ricketts family, and that person didn't do very well. So that kind of endears you, I think, when you find out that a big business combine is trying to take you down, it could actually backfire. You know, I don't know. And then plus now you've got the alderman reelected, and he's going to be there for 4 years. You know, they're billionaires, but they still have to operate within the limits of the city. You know, they need permits. You know, they work with a lot of different aspects of the city government. So I don't know how wise it was for the Ricketts family to take on that particular alderman. And I think if you look at his campaign contributions, you're going to find that a lot of the bars and club owners who appreciate him, you know, freely give to his campaign, and that you'll see often. Okay, super. So you guys get to see kind of how we're building these little profiles. You know, we're starting to learn a little bit about these individuals, and that's kind of how it goes. All right, cool. Dana, who do you got?
So I did mine on the 13th ward just because I don't live in the city, so I just chose a random ward.
Cool.
All right, so my alderman is Marty Quinn, and he's actually really interesting just because like I had like difficulty finding information on him. And then like I found an article and it was saying like how he has like no social media presence or anything like that. So I'm like, it's interesting. And then, but for his 2019 election, he ran against DePaul freshman. And yeah, and he won by 85% of the vote. And he also, Mike Madigan, he donated over $200,000 to Quinn's campaign.
Wow.
And he's been in office since 2011. So he's been reelected twice in
So
2015.
what does that tell you, that if the Speaker of the House, Madigan, who just resigned, by the way, what does that tell you?
Seems like he has strong ties with him.
Right. So the back to this idea that we discussed in our earlier presentation on the Chicago history, there is a machine that you've heard of, and Mr. Quinn is a member of the machine. And as is evidenced by the $200,000 from the Madigan's organization. So there's a tight group of politicians, and some of them are kind of have an Irish background from that part of the city, that goes all the way back to the Dailies, Richard J. Daley, the father of Richard M. Daley. So there is a group of politicians that are from a certain part of the city. They share very strong roots. Their parents knew each other, worked for each other, and Marty Quinn is of that lineage. And Michael Madigan giving him $200,000 really wanted him to be reelected, and they try to kick the kid off the ballot. Did you read about that? Can you say what happened?
So I was reading like a little bit about it, but I was like a little confused because they just threw all this information at you. But like, didn't they? I don't want to say because I'd probably be incorrect. I mean, I can look it up again.
Well, so remember I said there's a lot of things that happen when you try to run for office. You have to get people to sign your petition, right? And again, for aldermen, you know, the minimum is around 500, but again, usually candidates turn in around 1,200 or 1,300, you know, more than the minimum needed. And what the opponent to this young kid, who's one of your classmates, the DePaulians, the opponents went around to the neighbors and got them to sign affidavits saying that they didn't sign. So it's like people they were asked to actually lie in order to kick this kid off the ballot, and it didn't work, and it backfired. And so there was no charges, but there was actually you know, misdeeds, and why they did it against this 18-year-old kid, you know, what they were afraid of is a little baffling. I mean, as it turns out, Mr. Quinn won by an overwhelming majority, but for some reason they felt that they couldn't even have an opponent. And that shows you about the arrogance of some of these politicians. And anyway, the young man got a lot of attention. He was in the newspapers. So I think he got a world of education that, you know, that he can talk about now. Okay, so what else can you tell us about Marty Quinn? Is he strong for re-election, do you think?
Probably because of his ties.
Okay. And he is a little hard to read about. Were you able to detect anything about the kind of policies he pursues, or?
No, I mean, I'm sure there was one, but I was unable to look at the article because it wanted me to sign up and pay for subscription.
Okay. Okay, so he remains a little bit of a mystery, but that's interesting by itself. So his website's not great, doesn't have a lot of social media. That to me is not a good thing, honestly. When you're in public life, and he's been in public life for a long time, it should be an open book. We shouldn't have to wonder what he stands for. Okay, cool. Luke, what do you got?
Yeah, so I was able to find two, but I focused specifically on one. So I was looking at the areas or the community areas in O'Hare, since I'm from the suburbs. So for the 41st ward, it was Anthony Napolitano, and then for the 38th, it was Nicholas um, Sposato. So I decided to focus on Anthony. So he was actually a Chicago police officer from 2000 to 2004, 2000 2005. He was also a former firefighter, which I thought was pretty interesting, both of those statistics. He was elected in 2015, and he was also reelected in 2019. So he still holds the current chair of that position. He's a member of certain communities such as human relations, pedestrian and traffic safety, public safety and transportation, and public way. He's classified actually as an independent, so he's not a Democrat or Republican as far as political, as far as like politics.
Okay.
And then in 2019, he also endorsed Langfoot during the runoff. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And he was one of 15 aldermen who to oppose a $72 million property tax increase in Mayor Langfoot's first budget, which also included a $7 million fund for city colleges, $32 million fund for retired general obligation bond issues, and $18 million funding for libraries.
So he backed Lightfoot, but then he didn't like her some of the things she was proposing in her budget.
Yeah.
And what did he win by in his 2019? Was it a solid victory?
That I need to check. I was not able to find that. But
Yeah, it's at the board. You go to the Board of Elections. We can just review that right now.
Yeah.
So
I can check it.
I will stop sharing.
My apologies.
And we will go. Oh, I cannot minimize Zoom. Okay. Let me go to the Board of Elections website, which is Board Elections Committee of Chicago. Election results. Okay, share screen. All right. So here are the election results. We want to go to 2019.
Yeah, you can do 15 or 19. It doesn't. I'd be curious to see both.
All right, but we'll start. We're going to do 2019 for our sake here. So we're going to go to the general here. And it looks like it causes a download. So let's see what it downloaded. Ah, here we go. So it comes up with something like this. So the first thing we see is, let's say your ward is 38. So 38 had 11,000 ballots cast. And when we go to the 41st ward, it was a blowout. So there, he ran against a guy named Tim Hennigan, and he got 70% of the vote. So he didn't need to go to a runoff. So I'll place this document in the chat.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And everybody will have it. So we'll call this February 2019 election results. Let's see if I can actually do that. Go back to the chat. All right, my computer, desktop. and get you that document so you can take a look at it. There you go. Oh, there it is, February. Yeah, okay. All right, so now it's in chat. And then let's also get the runoffs. And we'll take them all. So here is the spreadsheet that we were going to put that in the chat. Well, doesn't want to download. All right, so I'll put the link in the chat. How about that? Okay, so now you have all that for you. All right, cool. Remington, what do you got?
I apologize. I have nothing. This is the first I'm hearing of this. I imagine you guys went over this last week.
We did.
In class, I was not here and I didn't see any email traffic, but I'd be happy to make up the assignment.
Yeah, so you just have to look at the presentation from last week. It's all there. That's in the PowerPoint. The link is in. The links are also in the base camp for the homework. So if you wouldn't mind reviewing the video and review the slides, it'll tell you basically you pick one alderman, one of the 50 all, pick someone who wasn't picked today, and follow the instructions and give this little report. Okay. All right, so let's go back to the deck and we can finish up. All right, share the screen. Here we are back again. All right. So what I'd like to ask you guys is, what did you make of this assignment? What was your reactions to doing this research?
I thought it was interesting learning more about my own neighborhood since I didn't know so much before and I had just moved here. And I thought it was interesting learning about like kind of the scandal behind what was going on with Thomas Tunney and the Ricketts family, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought it was interesting that a lot of his contributions came from these bars and stuff. I want to look more into it, but it was valuable information that I need to know about my own neighborhood and what happens in my own neighborhood.
Okay. What other observations from doing this work?
I thought it was really interesting because when I first did research, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have like so much information, and then it was anything but.
You think maybe the information was a little harder to get?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? Have you done this kind of research before? I take it no. Okay. All right. I've now put the spreadsheet in the chat. So now you've got the complete results of the 2019 elections. Compare that little kind of research. I know you just did a little bit of it to the kind of research that you normally do. You know, that you're normally tasked with from your classes. Difference, similarities.
I would say the content is a bit different. Mostly in my classes, I'm researching psychological disorders, etc. So it's different for me, but it's interesting.
It's interesting. Good. Well, fair enough. We believe that this kind of research should be very standard for anybody going into this work. Even if you're not, even if you're saying, I have no interest in running for office, I'm never going to be involved in elections. You have to know these things, we think, to be complete practitioners. You have to know who's representing you. And be able to have a pretty informed decision, not like, I like the look of him or her, or she's a smooth talker or whatever, that's an emotional reaction. You want to know, what do they stand for? Who helped them win office? Who gave them money? Is that meaningful to you? I mean, do you care? Is it going to affect your vote one way or another? And their voting record. Come on, it's like, did they say one thing? They talk a good game, but you have to see their voting record. Like they actually did show up and fight for this cause or this bill, or no, guess what? They voted against it. Ooh, they didn't talk about that, did they? And sometimes it's in the papers. So if you Google, the name of the elected official and you spend, a half an hour, you can learn a lot. But these are the records. These are the places that keep the records that you ought to know about. All right. Has anyone here considered running for office? No. Eli is raised his hand. You say yes? Talk about that, Eli.
So definitely not considering as in like right now, but in the future, if that's what you're referring to.
Yes, that's what I'm referring to. And why, may I ask?
So I'm from Kentucky, very conservative area. And so I kind of am seeing moving out of the state as my like awakening and going back and making a difference and kind of bringing some of the positivity from here down there is kind of what I want to do. And also engage youth in voting.
Cool. Well, don't forget your classmates. And don't forget Eli, because if he does go home to Kentucky in a few years and he sets up family or he sets up a career and pulls down roots, you're going to hear from him. And you should hear from him. And if he reaches back to you and say, hey, old classmate, old homie, remember me from 2021, old Eli? Give him some love. Send him $50. That's how it works. Awesome. We think that's awesome. And we encourage you, Eli, to make good on that dream in its good time. Is it for everybody? No, for sure. Absolutely not. And if it's not for you, that doesn't make you a bad person. But it's for more people than you think it's for. That is one of our core teachings. And it's certainly for more people coming from Adler and DePaul's social justice programs than you would be led to believe. And we think it's a failing, frankly, of the places of higher learning that they have not challenged you to step up and lead in this way and prepare you to at least think through the challenges of it. As again, so if you think about how many students are at Adler right now, say 500, and say inside of the various social justice programs or community service programs at DePaul, who knows, 5,000 students are in the same kind of space as you are. If only 10% of you got that itch and carried through on it, think of what a difference it would make in America. Think of 10% of all the social justice students in America across all the universities. Jane Addams, the School of Social Work at Southern Illinois University, on and on and on. So many places where people very much like yourselves are wrestling with these big issues, and trying to do something either through your own personal life, like could be a counselor or a career person, or some people said they're in clinical psych or other pieces of the work that are motivating you. Well, think of those people actually writing the laws, hiring the judges, or drafting the budgets to decide how much money is going to go to the public health department in Kentucky, or, whatever your issue is, that you care. There's not enough drug counseling. There's not enough wellness programming in where you live. Well, imagine that you're the person that actually changes that and takes your knowledge of what is needed for a good social construct, social community, and actually writes the law. Think about it. Okay. Someone said, Cece says, I don't think my social anxiety can handle it. Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart. That is true. I ran for office, and it was the most tough thing I ever did, but it was also one of the most exhilarating things I've ever done. And when you knock on someone's door as a candidate, you're humbly going to them to ask them for their vote, but you're also listening to them. And this idea of listening to people, as you know, as clinicians, as people who are dedicated to the human psyche and the human condition, the idea of listening civically is powerful. So listening is at the heart of a lot of our civic work, or is the heart of a lot of our clinical work, isn't it? Could you be a good clinician if you were a shitty listener? I don't think so. But there is something therapeutic I will put to you as in this civic process of speaking your heart fully to another person who's seeking your vote. And it wasn't like I was like patiently waiting for you to shut up so I can give you my flyer. I was really interested in hearing what you had to say, because I was learning. And by being open to hearing from my constituents or my would-be constituents, I was sharing with them on a level that is not normal. So it's not normal to go up to a person and ask them, what do you think about taxation? Or, what do you think about policing? Or what do you think about healthcare? Or do we have enough nurses? That's not a normal conversation that people might be very guarded if you just sort of like turn to someone on the subway, just start talking, but as a candidate, it's completely normal. Okay. And I'll repeat the question I asked earlier that you started to answer in chat. Why would the skills and mindsets being cultivated at your program, whether it's DePaul or Adler, be needed in public life right now?
I feel like we need more people that genuinely care and aren't just out there for the money. And I think that at Adler, our mission is to promote social change, social justice, and it's integral to the school. And I think, the process of us becoming socially aware psychologists is vital. And I think that would be very important when running for a position in any capacity, is to be socially aware. And yeah, so I think that would contribute greatly to running for office somewhere.
Absolutely. Does anybody want to add to that? Or, embellish that comment? From the Adlerian or from the Vincentian point of view? Make sense? Okay. And does that sound crazy? Like unattainable? No, not at all. All right. Last thought is kind of another open-ended question, is how can we get more of you to run for office and to help others run? How can we do that?
More inspiration, more drive. I know personally, me, like I said earlier, my social anxiety would be like, no, you're not running for office. That's my own personal hurdle that I would have to overcome. But I think just from these meetings that we've had has provided that inspiration and that drive that I feel like a lot of people in my cohort or people my age don't receive or are unaware. There's so many people that students are unaware of everything that we've been talking about just now. So I think there needs to be widespread knowledge about these topics.
Okay, I'll second that motion. You can't do it if you don't know it. So this idea of inspiring, educating, modeling, bringing people into the Adler or DePaul systems who were from your world, but who have actually run for office, to just know them, that they're out there, that certainly would be a good plus from my point of view. That's how if I was your dean and I was charged and I was going to say, like, this is a great idea, Tom, how can we do that over here at our program? I would say, well, Donna Edwards, I'll put that name in the chat. I invite you to look her up. From Maryland. She was a social justice executive. She was fighting for women's rights in Maryland and became the head of a statewide organization. So she made that transition. Remember the triangle? She was down in the corner doing education, organizing, we need more rape kits, stuff that was very specific, lots of meetings. Oh, I think we need a law. I better go talk to my state representative. Oh, wait a minute. That's not, you know what? Forget about it. I'm going to run for Congress. So she made that the three corners of the triangle. And she won. She was elected to the Congress, where she served for quite a few years. Okay. All right. We're coming to the close of our time. Any thoughts or comments about the work that we covered today?
So,
Yeah.
well, what's due? I mean, what would you like us to have ready for next class?
You need one of your public policy positions digested. And for Remington to please do the assignment that was due today. And so everybody should take the data you shared about your candidate or your alderman and just put it on a one-page Word document and throw it in to that folder that's already there that has these resources. So you can just put the name of the alderman on the top of your document. So Alderman Sposada, Alderman Tunney, Alderman whatever, and then put the stuff that you shared in that Word document and any other goodies that you can come up with between now and then. All right, clear? All right. Checkouts. How do we feel? Give me a word. Give me a word. Give me something. Give me a word. CC.
I'm feeling better than I did earlier. This distracted me a lot from anxious stuff that's going on with practicum. So I'm feeling a bit better.
Better is good. Eli.
I'm extremely tired and I'm probably going to take a nap after this.
Okay. Gonna take a nap. Me too. Emily.
Thoughtful.
Thoughtful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dana.
Yeah, super tired, but I thought everything was very, I didn't know any of that kind of stuff, so I thought it was cool to know.
Okay. Luke.
Definitely motivated.
Motivated. And Remington.
Informed.
Informed. All right, everybody. Have a great week. You got your marching orders. You have any questions, please email Jonathan. He's your mentor, your shepherd. Everyone have a great week. Everyone stay safe. Be well.
Thank you.